There's a lot of talk out there in property management about becoming more of an asset manager, but I see very few people actually making real moves towards it. And that's why this conversation with Paul Arrington I thought was really cool. Like he's not just coming at it from like a repeat what other people are doing. He's putting it into action. You know, like he's got a way he's going about it. It's unique. It includes the way he's differentiating, the offer that he brings to the table, how he sees technology and implementation and AI and where it's all going, ultimately leading to legacy from a guy that's done a lot of stuff and he is not done yet. I think you're really going to like this conversation with Paul Arrington. Enjoy. Welcome to the Property Management Frame Breakers podcast. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez, and I am here to introduce you to the folks in the property management space that have broken the frame of what you may believe was possible. This podcast is presented by Vendoroo. It is your all-in-one AI solution for resolving your maintenance needs. Let's go. Paul Arrington,
yes.
PMI Arrico.
Yeah.
What's up, man?
You know, it's just living the dream here in downtown Tampa, meeting you. It's just, it's a beautiful day.
Yeah.
It's going to be bright and sunny all day long. We're going to tour around Tampa and go to the office, see some people, meet some people.
Yeah, we're going to do the content thing that we like to do. Okay, so I wanted to have you on the podcast because we were speaking at Broker Owner, and you have ideas on how to. I'm a big fan of this idea of like growing in share of wallet to your client, but there's a good way and a bad way to do it, in my opinion, right? Like there's share of wallet of like, you know, how a general contractor likes to add change orders,
right?
And it's not a good experience,
right? Yeah.
And then there's share of wallet that is you're adding more value, you're creating more win-win scenarios, you're aligning with their goals,
right?
And you know, if you were to completely zoom out of all of it, so I like that as a business model, but if you were to zoom out of it completely, I believe property management is changing, right? So I think that property managers are going to have to figure out these new innovative models of evolving and becoming not just like, you know, not a middleman in this like transaction, but, you know, vertically up or down and whatnot, right? So first of all, let's just start there. The idea of property management changing and the need to enter through a different part of the value equation of the real estate transaction. Is that something that you feel? Is this why you're doing it?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. So let me say, I believe there's two types of property management. There's your landlord property management. And that's a property manager who, you know, might market the property, get a tenant, maybe screen them, maybe not do it well, or even worse, a self-managing landlord, screening the tenant, not doing it well, and so on, calling out maintenance. And that's a landlord property manager. It takes care of the property at the very basic level. They're managing the problems. But then there's the asset property manager, which is what we do. And that's the person that partners with that owner and partners with that owner's realtor if they happen to have another realtor that isn't us. And so we take them through that process of from even starting buying it, looking at it from an investment point of view, instead of a view like, oh, I like the number of bedrooms, I like the way it's this, I like the way it's that, I love the landscape. You know, that person, that house is going to be beautiful for both of those people. But the person buying it with an asset mindset is going to be looking toward the future. And, you know, what we're preaching right now is people who bought their houses and they have the low interest rates right now, those are the people that are sitting on a lot of equity, lots and lots of equity. Matter of fact, I think America has the most equity in their homes that they've ever had in history.
Ever. Yeah, correct.
So, you know, what's coming about, I think you're going to see is where people are going to want to tap into that equity and, you know, pay off debt. You know, prices are high, so they're going to have debt. They're using their credit cards, so they can either pay off the debt or they can maybe buy an investment home.
Build wealth.
Or exactly. Or if they want to move into another house and keep the current house as an investment home, perfect. But they have to have a property manager that looks at that home as an investment and starts looking at it with a budget and a mindset like that.
I love it, man. There's something that we say a lot on the Not Your Average Investor show, which is this idea that your return on equity is zero. Right. So seeing yourself as someone that goes beyond the property management space and somebody that is helping Americans put their equity to work for them in a transitionary period, particularly right now, where the stock market is doing these crazy things. We're clearly living in this like
Twitter
a new
economy.
time. Yeah.
You know, like this roller coaster,
Right.
man, that's based on tweets, and the Dow Jones goes up and down 10 points on a tweet, and then you find out that the tweet's not real. Like I just released this newsletter basically saying that, like, you know, as property managers, we've sold ourselves forever as like vitamins. Like, hey, you want to hold on to this property, it builds wealth. But right now we can be a painkiller. You know, we can be like, get off of this train. And that's why this model in particular right now to me is so interesting. So first of all, I guess explain to me how you go from the idea of asset manager, from property manager to asset manager feels like a sexy saying that people are talking about. You're doing it.
Right.
What's the difference, you know, outside of just talking about it? What's the difference?
So our software, most property managers have a software system. There's a bunch of different names out there, and all of them build reports or provide different reports. And that's great, but all of them show what the property is doing historically. It doesn't show what they're going to do in the future. And so that's what we're doing. So say, for instance, an owner has a big cost. Air conditioning blows up. It's $10,000. A lot of owners are going to think, heck with this. I'm going to sell this property. It's cost me too much money. But then we look at their pro forma and we see how much they've spent and how much they've earned and how much they're going to earn, even with that big $10,000 spike. It changes their mindset. And then they start to think, oh, okay, so my kids now, the generational wealth, because we kick that in, the generational wealth starts building. It's like, so you're saying to me that in 10 years, I'm going to have this much in value if you keep the property, if the economy goes the same way it is. And you know, there's a lot of those variables that no one has control of. But historically speaking, yes. And it changes their mind. And then they start thinking, well, you said it, the stock market's going crazy. That's not a political statement. It's the fact.
Yeah.
And so housing prices, while they, you know, they do fluctuate a little, they're not going to be as volatile.
I like it. I like the idea of, man, I got a turn coming up. It's going to cost me $4,000. Look at these $4,000 as an investment into your 401k.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Like, it changes the conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a good point too, because there's a lot of property owners out there now, even though they have a very low interest rate, they might not exactly cash flow, or new investors buying a home.
Yeah. Cash flow is compressed right now.
It may not exactly cash flow the way you want it to.
Yeah.
And you know, this is one of those statements where, you know, some people believe it always has to cash flow. Some people look at the long term, that they don't care if it doesn't cash flow.
Yeah.
Either way, we can look at the numbers and show them, well, this way it cash flows, this one doesn't, but it doesn't cash flow this much. And like you said, if you think about it as a payment into your 401k, I'm maxing out my IRAs every month.
Yeah.
I don't want to tell you what that payment is, but I'll tell you, it's a lot more than a mortgage.
Yeah.
So if you think about that, you're investing in your wealth in a different way.
So let's talk about the mechanics of how you're doing it, right? So you're using a software that allows you to analyze the property, have these conversations, and then what you're telling me is that you're setting up meetings with your owners and talking about, hey, you have this much equity in a home. With this type of equity, this is the performance. If you were to pull out this equity right now, you could buy another property in Indianapolis or Jacksonville or Tampa. Like, talk to me through those conversations of what you're planning on doing there.
So it's exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So we have a Zoom meeting typically, because most of my clients, investors don't live near me. And I do that. Exactly. I go through their property. I go through their performance. We look at how it's done. And then we look to see what the cash flow would be buying another investment property. And the cool thing is, let's say that person decides to take $200,000 out and buy another one. We can look to see how we want to deploy that $2,000 or $200,000. If we want to put, you know, a series of $50,000 on a couple of homes or whatever, we can take that and analyze it with data in our software that shows the houses that are actually available and what their performance is. And we can also position the numbers differently, 25 on this one, 50 on that one, and kind of build a portfolio with them. And it's going over really, really well. Several owners are considering doing that right now.
Yeah. This is, you know, I told you kind of, I came into this space through JWB Real Estate Capital, right? So like, I'm very like skewed to the idea of turnkey rental property investing already as a model. And what I find very interesting is that I feel like JWB's been doing this for 17 years, 20 years, like actually 19 years exactly. But this wasn't super available to everybody. They had to build their own model to do this. They had to they invested heavily in Salesforce, like all these different, like millions of dollars in software. And it sounds like there's now solutions that are coming out of the box that enable you to do, it's called like Resify is the one that you're talking about. What's it called? What's it called?
Rescover.
I was way off. Yeah. So Rescover, I think Blanket's doing stuff like this, right? Like there's a whole category of softwares that are now coming out and like enabling this thing for property managers. And I think it's time to think that way. Like I'll hear Mark Brower talking about, I want to move into like an assets under management model. Right. You know, like this idea of going from property manager to asset manager. And at the end of the day, wealth builder with these kinds of tools really make these conversations way more interesting. And it positions you closer to the source of value than at the transaction level, which commoditizes you.
Right. You know, it's talking about the software and stuff. It's interesting to know. I told you earlier the story about American Homes for Rent and a couple of other large conglomerates that we helped buy houses for. Well, this was back in the 2010, 11, 12 timeframe when we had all the zombie foreclosures.
Yeah. Well, let me just position that for our friend that's listening right now, right? So, Paul, you came into this like so you've been a property manager
since 2004.
Since 2004. In the post financial crisis like crash, you got a absolute baptism by fire into the acquisition game. This is the story you're about to tell.
Yes, drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah, go tell me the story.
So, short story, I was at the broker owner, NARPM broker owner, and I got a message on the phone from a person from American Homes for Rent. And long story short, we went and signed the agreement. They wanted to hire a MPM, Master Property Manager from NARPM, in their markets all over the cities, and they wanted to have an MPM because they knew that we're the industry's leaders, allegedly. And so they hired us. And we went and looked at a couple of houses and went to the courthouse and with cash bought one. When I say cash, cashier's check. And that was the start of American Homes for Rent in Tampa. And we went on to buy over 1,000 just for American Homes for Rent. Plus we started buying for Invitation Homes and Progress Residential. And what I learned by that is how they analyze the property to scale. Yeah, because I still have a lot of their spreadsheets and data from way back when we were doing it. These guys were amazing numbers crunchers, and I learned from them, and it was an amazing experience. And so that's the software basically does all the. And to be honest with you, I couldn't do anything. They had these spreadsheets that did things that I didn't know spreadsheets could do. But now I've got software that does it, so I look like a hero. Yeah, but it's really the behind the scenes. But more than that, it's the knowledge of what those numbers mean. You can look at a spreadsheet and not know what it means. Yeah. So I think that's the value that we bring too, is a property manager just going into that way.
I think this is so parallel to the AI discussion, right? Like it's like the tool can be the tool. At the end of the day, sure, if your value is being a spreadsheet wizard, then that value is getting commoditized by these softwares. Right. But as property managers, just like AI, if your value is like coordinating emails and schedules, that's going away with AI. But if your value is the relationship with the client and the contextual knowledge to how to explain it so that they understand what to make of this information, that's never going to go out of style, man.
It's never going to go out of style.
And you're like leaning into that. Yeah.
Well, and that's exactly right. So the idea of AI, it's really intriguing to me, and I'm not the youngest kid on the block. But I look at it as it's a really cool tool to be able to illustrate my knowledge that I've gained from the experience. Yeah. I don't want it to do my job for me, quite honestly, because this is a relationship-based business. And it's a relationship-based adventure for everyone, the investors, myself included. So I want to be able to use tools to illustrate and to make us feel better about our investments rather than just throwing stuff at the wall without any knowledge of what's going on.
Yeah, 100%. Let's dive into that. You said you don't want it to do my job. What is your job?
My job is relationships.
Yes.
Working with the people, helping them to understand what I know.
That's it.
Helping them to feel comfortable. Yeah. And also to guide them when it's not going to be comfortable, because sometimes it's not comfortable. That $10,000 air conditioning call, that's not a comfortable call. I don't care who you are and who you're calling. Yeah. But if you built the right relationship and you've talked with the people and you also talk with them about good things too. Yeah. If they see my phone ring and they run, that's a bad sign, But if they see my phone ring, it's like, I wonder what he's got to say today, Oh, man. Yeah. So that's a key. And so my job is building relationships, maintaining relationships, and having my team support me and those relationships. And I've got the best team on the planet.
And helping owners stay comfortable in their ownership experience, right? Like to me, I think you're nailing it, right? Like you've nailed it very succinctly in the sense that it's not, your job is not the task doing. Your job is the experience and like the level of certainty you bring to owning real estate, right? Like that is your job.
That's my job.
And that comes from building trust with people, from spending time with people, from knowing them, and from knowing how to help them understand what they don't understand to make the best decisions possible for them.
Absolutely.
AI is never going to take that away from you. Instead, what it's going to do is going to like take away the mundane so that you can spend more time doing those things.
That's exactly right. And that's exactly what I want to use it for too. I want to bolster my knowledge to where I can illustrate it. And then I want it to make me more efficient so I can keep in contact and keep on point with all of our process and make sure that the management goes well and we don't miss things. We don't miss a lease renewal. We don't miss things like that.
Yeah.
That's what AI is great for. Yeah. But AI is not great for, and I see them advertise now, oh, we've got language models that can talk like you. Like, nobody's going to talk like me. I'll tell you that right now. So I got that from my partner, Shannon.
Especially when you put that twang in there.
Yeah, so I mean, I got a lot of different voices. Yeah. So I don't want to. Yeah. I don't want to be replaced by a machine. Yeah. And I don't expect that ever will, honestly.
Yeah. It's a lever of value for you. So all right. So let's go back to the original conversation. Here's the other thing that you mentioned that I thought was really interesting while we were preparing for this is that there was a moment in time where the game changed and you were there for the opportunity and you went in and everybody did well, right? Like, tell me about that like inflection point of like having access to that opportunity and how it like boosted the business.
You know, I'm going to tell you a story that I think is really cool, and you're going to meet Kelly in a little bit. But when American Homes for Rent came on to me and they said, hey, when you buy these houses, I was just one guy and one other guy, my buddy Chuck, that was our leasing agent. Mm-hmm. We weren't big, and when they came to us, I had two property managers too, Liz and Jill. Mm-hmm. But we weren't big. They had their own portfolios. But when we got that opportunity, it was just amazing. And we all flourished and blossomed. And Liz has become something spectacular over in Colorado. And it's just been amazing. But the team we built during that is still with me.
Yeah.
And I think that's just cool. So we took that at that opportunity and built that and went.
And to be clear, the opportunity was flood of REO, right?
Flood of REO. So we were helping so many. That's why I look at people say, wow, you worked with all these hedge funds. They're nasty. They're tenants and stuff like that. They really aren't.
Yeah.
I manage a lot of tenants, and tenants are tenants.
Yeah.
And when you're that large, you have to have processes. And sometimes those processes do dehumanize the relationship. I get it. But by and large, when we're buying these houses and put them into the flow, I was not able to do it. So I just happenstance met Kelly at our BNI meeting. And she said, hey, I just got my real estate license. I was a realtor in Michigan, and now I'm here. And I said, before you hang your license with someone, let's talk. And that was the opportunity that you're talking about right there. We bought so many houses and helped so many people out of foreclosure. We helped people that own the houses that didn't even know they were foreclosed on and kept them on board and as a tenant. Yeah. And they didn't, and that was confidential. We didn't go tell the neighbors that anything, and that's all they asked for. And so we helped so many people too. Yeah. A lot of people got rich off of it, American Homes for Rent and all their investors. But you know what? That's the opportunity we're at right now.
Say more.
We're at that opportunity right now. Mm-hmm. This isn't a political statement. The market's doing what it's doing. It did it for years. All the times, I don't care who was in office, it happens. Yeah. Instead of worrying about who's doing what and to whom, I think about, okay, how can I position myself and the people that I work for in the game we've got? You got to play the game you're given. I did my part. I voted. And here we are. Yeah. Doesn't matter who I voted for. Yeah. Here we are. Yeah. And we're running down the street.
Yeah, it's funny, man. It's becoming more exaggerated as politics move into social media. It's becoming more exaggerated as the government is taking more stances on economic policy through social media. It's becoming more exaggerated, but it's not new to this administration, right? Like, if you think about it, I think it's just we're in this wave, and we're in this wave of time where I don't think the market has appropriately priced the interconnectivity that we have, the interconnection of all the systems, and the speed of knowledge exchange as the risk variable, right? Yep. Like you look at things like the GameStop thing, you look at things like Silicon Valley Bank, and now you're looking at this like Twitter tariffs and what it's doing to the market. Yeah. And it's very clear that we are living in a situation where more and more black swans are more and more likely to happen that swing things one way or another. There's a statistic that Greg Cohen likes to talk about how like it's something like 3 out of 5 years the market takes like a 5 to 6% dip or something like that at any given time, and people might look at the market and say, fine, but over time it still does X. Just like we look at real estate and say over time it still does X. But here's the deal. Whoever is about to retire right now is screwed, right? Like, and no matter what the market does long term, you don't want to get caught being 1 year from retirement away and being in one of these like black swan events that's going to materially change your life when you can literally set it and forget it with real estate long term for that piece of the portfolio. So like what you're saying is absolutely true of like, it's time for property managers to step up and say, this is no longer a vitamin, it's a painkiller to this idea.
You know, and for the longest time, property managers and were looked at as the necessary evil.
Correct.
You know, realtors, sales agents don't like property management. I didn't say property managers, property management, because it's a hard game.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
It's not a transaction where it's done and closed. It's an ongoing concern, a relationship that has a lot of legalities and litigation involved and rules and regulations.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing it full time, you can get caught behind and even get yourself in some deep water. So when a realtor is in that era and the market is closing down, now's the time for them to partner with the property manager.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing with realtors that I know with my system. And it's an opportunity for people to take that equity and buy it. I can't reach all the homeowners, but I can reach many of their agents and resurrect maybe even some business for agents by showing them how this is how you might be able to sustain your family and help your client and talk with them about what your equity position is, what their future holds. If they're heavily in the market, they're probably looking for a different avenue or at least for something different.
Yeah.
And so why not talk to them about real estate?
Yeah.
And use that as a viable and partner with a property management like me and help your client. And it's a win-win for everybody involved. And there's going to be a tenant out there that's going to appreciate that too.
Yeah.
Well, you just heard from Paul about seizing the moment and the opportunity when the game has changed is what you have in front of you right now when it comes to being some of the early majority in treating AI for what it is. Your next great hire that allows you to stop just doing more and do more important things. And that's what we built at Vendoroo. We built an AI that can handle 80 to 85% of all of your maintenance coordination so that you can take that time and devote your people to really taking care of that 15 to 20% of maintenance that really moves the needle and will make a big, big difference for keeping clients and, not churning and stuff like that, or being able to take time off, or just having the bandwidth to think where all this stuff is going and build the business for yourself. Do stuff like Paul is doing. Take advantage of these like new inflection points. Be an asset manager. All these different things. If you haven't tried Vendoroo yet, it is time you check it out. 76% of the hundreds of property managers that tried our agents, our AI agents at Narpa Broker Owner, rated the AI agent as the equivalent of an A-level employee doing maintenance. Let that sink in. Go to vendoroo.ai, book a demo, and bring some A players on your team to handle maintenance so you can do more important things.
I think what you're doing right now, what you're talking about right now, Paul, is a very modern way of doing business development that I think has always worked and is not now coming to the forefront. And it's the idea of you're not just thinking about how can I change my pricing and do different things in order to make more money. You're thinking how can I add value to not just my client but my ecosystem in a way that we all win. Like you're talking about another context shift, right? Like the NAR ruling, realtors are looking for other ways to make money as well, right? So like how you get them involved in becoming more of a wealth builder, asset manager, coalition. You're talking about, we're saying earlier how as part of PMI, you're able to enlist this network and say, okay, well, you got an investor that's got some equity here in Tampa. Maybe they want a property in Indianapolis. You can facilitate that deal and everybody can make some money there. And while property management has a really good recurring revenue model, the idea of like adding these other moments where you make a bunch of gross profit because of a brokerage fee or some kind of like referral or some kind of deal that you're setting up, right? Like that's where companies make that. That's where that owner gets that liquidity, where you're paying yourself your bonuses and stuff like that. So I love it, man. I think it's great.
Yeah. And that was a great point too, because some investors, they're a little less risk averse, or they're a little more risk averse, and maybe our cap rates or our IRRs aren't what they want them to be here.
Yeah.
But a realtor that's here won't necessarily know what the cap rates are in Louisiana, which is a great place to invest, by the way, or Indianapolis or Michigan.
Cash flow markets.
But those are cash flow markets. But when we're in our bubble here in Tampa, they don't know where that is. But see, we do. I do, because I talk to these people every day on a Zoom or something, and we talk about what their markets are like. And we talk in between ourselves like, hey, I've got a buyer that he's looking for this cap rate. I can't find it here in California. I can't find it here in Florida. And I was like, well, I've got those all day long over here. Yeah. We make that introduction. And at the end of the day, the client is taken care of, and I've taken care of them, and I've helped my customer or my fellow franchise and wherever that is. Yeah. It's a beautiful model.
You've added value to your entire network, not just yourself. You're growing share of value in your network. Right? Like that is like the ecosystem building that creates this like very sustainable business that's well insulated from problems. And again, something AI is not going to take away from you. AI is not going to take your network away from you. It's not going to take your ability to connect dots and add more value to the equation. It's only just going to take away the work that you didn't want to really be doing. So that you can spend more time doing that.
Exactly. AI is great. It can tell that same investor, hey, there's a person in Indianapolis that can find you a house that's going to get your cap rate. AI can do that. Yeah. Because that's the mechanical part. But it can't do the personal connection like, hey, call Mark. Yeah. Call Wendy. And, she knows this or he knows that, and solidify that deal. Because that person isn't going to buy from an AI link. That person's going to buy from that connection.
Again, your role is creating a sense of comfort and certainty in this journey, right? So like, you create comfort and certainty by not being an interface that says, like you're not Zillow, you're Paul who says, I know Mark over there, and I know his core values, and I know his back office is legit, and you can vouch for that, right? Like that's the value that'll never go away. Another thing that I want to just kind of like retouch on is this idea of inflection points. There's like macro and micro inflection points, right? Like I think we just talked about an inflection point in the market for us right now is this idea that it's going to be real easy to crap on the stock market, right? Like, and dial in on that pain in order to grow the interest from the market and like doing business with you, kind of like you tapped into the REO market. I remember my first business, there was I was doing green building consulting, and this like legislation passed where people were getting paid, like the government released a whole bunch of funds for like duct sealing and like tightening ducts. Yep. And I was one of the only people in Miami that had that certification that could do the duct blaster with the blower door test and do that stuff. That was a phenomenal season of my business for me. Like that was what made me make money in my first business. And it's important for us to be looking for those types of moments. You mentioned another thing, like you had the NARPM designations when Invitation Homes or American Homes for Rent showed up looking for somebody that had a certification, right? So the idea of like spreading the surface area of luck and being ready for these inflection points and then taking action, I think is a really underrated one.
Absolutely. So we talked about landlord property management and then asset property management. Well, within landlord property management, you have your people that are part of the professional organizations, the trade organizations, just like realtors do. Realtors have the National Association of Realtors. Property managers have the National Association of Residential Property Managers. And the cool thing about that is we're a collective that we're really involved. We go to classes, we get educated, we stay in touch with all the legislation. You said legislation was passed that helped your business. There's legislation that's passed that hurts ours. Correct. And it hurts single landlords that are self-managing. But the problem is they don't know that these laws have passed, most likely. Yeah. And realtors that are trying to do it on the side that aren't involved, they're trying to do it and they're not engaged and informed. And that's the key is if you're going to hire a property manager, hire one that knows what they're going to do or knows what they're doing. And so when these large firms wanted to jump into this market, they didn't want to do it by one house. They wanted to buy thousands. American Homes for Rent owns 68,000 houses. And I bought the very first one in Tampa. The point is they're buying these houses. They knew they had to have somebody that knew what was going on. And I think designations and industry knowledge is important for anyone to look for.
Yeah.
And then you go on. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I'm into it. Like I get the sense that you are. I know you're very involved with the CRMC, and then I know you're also very involved with like your PMI community, right? Like I feel like you're somebody that's done a really, really good job of like being very involved and that adding value to like everything that you bring to yourself and then to others.
Right. That started from my days in the Air Force. You know, you're a team. You have a mission.
Yeah.
And when I first started out working on the flight line, working on fighter airplanes, you know, our mission was to make sure that airplane could fly. And there wasn't any of this, well, it's not my job. You know, if it needed to get done to make that airplane fly, it was your job, period. And to do that, you have to have a good team that works well together. And I just think that that's part of what I want to build now is a team of people that have a common goal. And that is to help each other build wealth. And, you know, regardless of the administrations, regardless of anything, we're responsible for ourselves.
Yep.
And I've taken another step further, and I want to help the ones that are around me. And if my knowledge helps that and brings them forward, and the whole thing with the designations, that's part of that. And getting those designations shows and helping other people get those designations. And then the CRMC that you mentioned, that's actually a company designation. There's only 47 in the United States that have that designation.
Yeah.
That's not because I'm bigger and better than anyone else, or all 47 of us are. It's just that people haven't focused on that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing, is to focus on improving yourself, especially in this economy, because it's going to be a dog eat dog world.
Yeah.
And you got to show yourself.
As you're saying it, right? Like my macro thesis on all of this is, you know, when you see these disruptive technologies come through, right? Like what AI is doing,
Right.
And you pair that with other big context shifts, like the generational wealth transfer that's going to change the expectation of the client, and this like overall macro social political kind of like change of like now the federal government cares about property managers when before like you were totally under the radar,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
What you see is there's going to be giant consolidation at the top, right? Like there is, like you look at e-commerce, there's like Amazon and Walmart and nobody else, right? Toys R Us is out, Sears is out,
Right.
All these people are out. And then there's going to be a whole bunch of like ground up other model coming from the bottom, right? Like the direct to consumer like brands that are now happening in e-commerce.
Yeah.
So if I think about it in property management, I don't know how feasible it's going to be for like one giant brand to Amazon it across the country, but I could see across like distributions, maybe state or, you know, multiple metro areas that all touch. I could see companies just really, really winning in that space and sucking up most of the oxygen. And then I could see with like this new tooling, the one man, 150 door company that's actually super profitable because AI is doing so many things. And the ones that are going to win at the top, I wouldn't be surprised if they're the ones that are like, they say that whole, like, you don't have to get ready when you stay ready,
Right?
right? Like it's going to be the ones that are going to be able to make that move to the top, have the designations that provide the social validation and the professional, like kind of like validation of what they know how to do. They have the tech stacks already. They're going to be able to like pounce on that type of stuff. So this idea of like affiliating yourself with the big brands like PMI, with the big kind of like designations like NARPM feels like a moat that you are creating for yourself specifically right now.
Well, I look at it like this. You know, we have the designations, and that's all great. But at the end of the day, we're still a person that's helping others.
Yeah.
And that's why I want to look at it is, you know, the person that wants to be helped for Seattle, or the person who wants to be helped in Louisiana. I want to be the facilitator for that to help those people.
I get it. Have I anything that I haven't hit on as far as that, like, you know, kind of the theme of this is going from property manager to asset manager, like getting more into that turnkey model. We talked about the idea that there's softwares that allow you to like now analyze. You can go to the owners, you can tell them the equity that they have involved. You can go across other affiliates of yours to see if they have other property and you can facilitate that deal. How does that incorporate into your business model? Like, I know that you're kind of like early on this, but do you see a future where this becomes the majority of what you're doing versus property management? Like, talk to me more about how you see the model evolving.
So the model is based on data and relationships like we talked about. And so let me walk you through what I think the process should be and the way we built it. Let's say you're the owner. I don't want it just to be, a couple electronic forms and okay, now what? And then you're wondering, I haven't heard from Paul in a while. What's going on? And then all of a sudden you hear later that, oh, we have a lease. You have no idea what's going on. I don't want that unless you want that. If you say, Paul, I'm going to give you an address, I don't want to hear from you until I have a tenant. But if you want a little bit more involvement, or at least not even involvement, but a little bit more information, that's what we want to deliver. We want to make you part of the process as far as what the process is. We don't want you to get involved with it. We want you to understand what we're doing so that you understand the value. So the big part of that is onboarding the property. It may be a property you've lived in for 20 years, like mine, or it may be a property you just bought and never saw before. We're going to go in and do the whole onboarding inspection, sort of like a house inspector does, because that's our baseline of our relationship as the owner and as the property manager. And, we don't want to have the times where, well, how come that didn't work? Didn't you check it? Well, of course we checked it. It broke. But I don't want to be the guy, no, we didn't check it. We thought, you just moved out. We thought it worked. We don't want to put that on it. The same way owners that are living in their houses for years, well, let that drawer that doesn't work well slide, or that light that flickers all the time, but you don't know why. Tenant isn't going to put up with that. They're paying money. They look at it as like, I'm paying money. This better be perfect because you know what? And they deserve that. So that's the move that I want to make with the owners and the tenants and make sure that we're all on the same page.
What I'm hearing is that you're not just flipping on a switch and becoming more of an asset manager. You're also thinking more of a hospitality company. Like you're moving more into the business model becomes much more about time spent in front of resident, time spent in front of owner. How do you free yourself up from that with all the tasks and the forever firefight of what property management entails? How do you think about that?
Well, that's where AI comes into play and helps make our processes move smoothly. You mentioned blanket. We use Vendoroo for our maintenance process, and the tenants love it because it's a communication process. They feel like we're being, and AI is doing a lot of it behind the scenes, but it feels like they're getting paid more attention to, and the owners and the vendors too. So that's where AI can fill in the gap. It doesn't replace us, but it instills some communication that was probably lacking, honestly, because, they did the report. You were at the broker owner. Owner's biggest thing that they want property owners for is maintenance. And the biggest problem with property managers is communication. So AI, especially Vendoroo, fills that gap and is fixing that gap. So I think that's a huge, or is that like this? Or Jim eyes the door.
Yeah.
But so AI is great for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'm glad you say that, man. Obviously this podcast isn't about Vendoroo in particular. It's about the overall thing. But that to me, this is where I think you see the difference between a true AI builder practitioner and not.
Right.
I feel like the people that have the problem defined correctly, like I believe we do, are the folks that understand that the value is to just get you out of the mundane and into the critical and into the high leverage thing and into the high value, into the good stuff, right? Into the place where you really show up and you can only do what you do. Everybody else that doesn't have it defined correctly is trying to teach you how to do a job better, as opposed to no, let's reallocate your effort into what really, really matters. Yeah. And that to me feels like that was the story we're telling at Broker Owner.
Right.
This idea that this should be a hire now, not a tool or whatnot. So it's really encouraging to see that you're benefiting from that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really remarkable to see how things are going. But the caution, and I'm taking words out of Kelly Segretto's mouth, and that is
smart lady.
She's a super smart lady. Yeah. And I was in a seminar with her, and something she said was really important to me and resonated is there's so many new things coming on scene. Yeah. There's so many companies popping up. I'm not going to name them, but one comes into play that supposedly is going to take this one over. But then you talk to that one, it's like, they're a flash in the pan. We've already got that. We've been beta testing it. We just don't want to roll it out until it's perfect. And then another one says, we're beyond you and there. You know what? We have one that does things, that's doing things. And I'm not going to jump to the new shiny thing because the thing I have is probably going to work or it's building it. So that's the caution I give. It's like, it's hard to migrate. I've migrated softwares for management software. Yeah. And that's a heavy, heavy lift. Yeah. Don't take it lightly. Don't just bounce from one to the next because that one's a little shinier or the grass a little greener, because that can get costly and it can lose clients as well because they they don't want a whole lot of change in the world.
Correct. That is the other part of the definition that I think the native AI company gets right that the other one doesn't. The one that isn't is giving you a new tool, a new login. It is a migration. To me, this native AI thing should feel like when you hire somebody, you're not like, all right, I just hired you. Now I need to know your login and your system. It's like, no. You now work in my system.
Right.
Like reducing the barriers of friction to like adoption by making it seamless, by allowing it to work with a Chrome extension that just plugs right into your PMS system, and now it knows what you're working and it's working alongside of you. You don't have to have like an extra login. To be able to like ask it questions via text and have it answer in natural language. To be able to train it not by putting in a work ticket saying I want this feature, but to just chat right back to the AI and the AI being like, oh, got it, Paul. From here on out, I'm going to act like this. That's what we're striving to build, which I think is what other people are getting wrong. They're trying to build it in this like closed ecosystem that forces you to use their software as opposed to like unleashes you away from software and just lets you communicate like a human being.
Right. And I'm a member of Vendoroo, and we've got Betty that we're just implementing, and I'm super excited, and my team is super excited too, because it's like you said, so many people call and ask me questions, and all my answers is really stuff that's written down in our policies and procedures manual. But now all they have to do is, instead of ask Paul, ask Betty. And it'll give them the same answer. It'll give them the same resource because that's the way it's trained. And that's just enormous.
Jay is such a smart guy.
Yeah.
I've gotten close to him. We built this like AI allowance. I think he's doing everything the right way. I love that he's busting out Betty Who and like the way that his moves are always the right moves in my opinion. Anything else, Paul? Anything else that you want to touch on?
We've seen some cycles in our days, and like I said earlier, I'm in a position now that I can help myself and help others. Whereas, when the American Homes for Rent and that crash happened, I was working so hard in the business, making sure that I told you the story about the audits and stuff like that. We were on point, but I was so hard working in the business, making sure that all went great, that I didn't work on the business. And that's what I'm doing now is I'm taking all of that knowledge and instead of working to build an empire, I don't want to build an empire. I want to build a legacy. And that legacy is to have someone say, hey, that PMI Arrico guy, and I wear a crazy hat with hair sometimes, like PMI Arrico guy, man, he's got it going on. He's helping people. He's helping himself. He's helping others around him. And I just that's my goal. That's my legacy. And to take my knowledge and help people build their wealth as well. Especially the military, because that's a whole nother project that I'm working on as well.
I love it, man. You and I have become like fast friends in the last month, right? And I just admire how you show up, man. I feel like you have a very conscious understanding that we only get so many chances to do this thing. It feels like in your journey, you have learned lessons that you're continuing to iterate on, and you're continuing to like refine the right way to do things. And you're like in this like headspace that I find very attractive, that feels like you've been around, like you said, you've been down cycle a couple of times. You've understood what works and what doesn't work. And I just have this like really strong feeling that this stuff is not linear, right? Like I feel like it all compounds, and you're in a moment where you're making some really exciting moves, man. And I'm super pumped to kind of like lay it on tape and be a part of the story, man, and be your friend, man. This is cool.
Yeah. Looking back on it, you said it. Every part of my life set me up to be where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
And I look back on it sometimes and I think, wow, I compare myself to other property managers that, we started kind of sort of the same time.
Yeah.
And they got 1,500 doors, 1,400 doors. I'm like, well, I was there, but I'm not. And, it's like, I look at my journey, I'm thinking, what if I'd have done this different? Would I be rich? What if I'd done that? Would it be huge or whatever?
Yeah.
And I think about it, and, going on a personal story, I was in the right places at the right times for a lot of things that happened. Both my daughters are adopted. They're 5 years apart. It's kind of the same family. If my Air Force careers and assignments hadn't worked a certain way, I wouldn't have been able to have that. And it put me into the position for property management when it did. So I was in the time of the cycles.
Yeah.
And it just seems like all that has led up to where I'm at now. I've learned all the crazy stuff that happened in the last crash. This crash is different, whole different reason, whole different effect, I think even.
Yeah.
But the lessons remain the same, is that you have to pay attention. You have to know where the ball is and who's throwing it. And I think I have a pretty good handle on that and how to analyze things. And I don't want to just, help myself. I want to help others, because we get a chance. And I'm 60. I don't know how many more chances I'm going to have. I'm healthy. I'm just saying, I don't know. I can't control the cycles.
Yeah.
And I want to be in the right place at the right time on this one.
It's cool energy. It's a cool message, man. I appreciate doing this with you, buddy.
Cool. Awesome.
Awesome.